And we are preparing to go live.
Okay, and then we can start. All right.
I'm
Okay.
also admitting people. I don't know why I'm allowed to admit people, and I'm doing.
Yeah, you are co-host.
I am meeting everybody.
Thank you for doing that for us. Okay, so let me open our webinar. Hello and greetings from the Traces Laboratory here at the Areté at Ateneo de Manila University. And a very warm welcome to our archaeology webinar series of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology and Asia, the anthropological and sociological initiatives of the Ateneo. And to another exciting talk that presents cutting-edge research and new discoveries in archaeology and paleoecology. So for today's webinar, we have the privilege to have Dr. Marta Arzarello as our speaker. Dr. Arzarello is a professor at the University of Ferrara in Italy, and she's the deputy director of the doctorate in the human science program, where she has directed 49 master and 12 PhD theses in prehistoric archaeology as of now. She's also known to many of us as the Secretary General of the International Union of Pre- and Protohistoric Sciences, UISPP, one of the largest associations in archaeology, which just held its 19th World Congress a month ago. Dr. Arzarello is the director of the Erasmus Mundus International Master and Doctorate in Quaternary and Prehistory programs. And she coordinates several internationally funded projects and initiatives. Also, since 2011, she's an accredited expert of the European Commission. And about that, while Marta is presenting today on European prehistory, she is a very important person for the archaeology of Southeast Asia and the Philippines. And many students and graduates in the region, and actually most archaeologists working in the Philippines, have at some point received a research grant or a scholarship thanks to Marta's efforts and her dedication. Marta is heading the excavations of Piranha North and Jotachara, and I think she will tell more about that in a while. And her main areas of research are on the technology and economic behavior during the Middle and Lower Paleolithic in Italy, the first peopling of Europe, of course, the Middle Paleolithic cultures of the Sahara, stone tool technology, and experimental archaeology. And needless to say, Marta is a prolific author with more than 150 international scientific publications. This webinar is jointly facilitated by Dr. Riczar Fuentes from the Department of Sociology and Anthropology and myself. The host and manager of this webinar is again Mr. Areté Balboa from the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, who will also lead through the Q&A section later. We like to thank the people and institutions that made this webinar series possible. The members of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, the School of Social Sciences, Areté, the Creativity and Innovation Hub of the Ateneo de Manila University, and the Eduardo J. Aboitis Sandbox Zone. Okay, I will now hand over to Dr. Marta Arzarello and her talk on what was it again? The first European peopling migration routes and behavior. Thank you so much. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you very much, Alfred, for the very nice introduction. I was crying. Thank you very much. And I wish to thank Dr. Pawlik and Dr. Fuentes to have invited me to make this webinar. Of course, the Ateneo de Manila University, that it's becoming an associate partner of our master, and I'm very happy for that. And I know Alfred sees a lot of fear, so more than a colleague is a friend, and I really thanks you for this invitation. So basically, as Alfred said, we will speak about the first European peopling. Of course, it's a very complex topic, and we will try to define it in more or less 40 minutes, so to have at the end the time to answer the question or to discuss, knowing that each new site that is discovered in Europe with a chronology about 1 million years ago, it's changing what we are saying. So maybe what I will say now will change tomorrow, because as we will see, we have very few data about the first European public. Oh, sorry. Okay. If we look at the general situation of the world, we know that everything happened firstly in Africa. So the first lithic production 3.3 million years ago, it's in Africa. The first Homo are in Africa. The first Homo sapiens are in Africa. But beside that, we have a lot of example of movement and colonization of other territory. Of course, it's very complicated to know why man was leaving Africa to go in other continents before Asia and after Europe. But some explications are done according to the increasing of population, the availability of raw material, animals, of course. And so today it's not clear why we assist to this out of Africa, but we can imagine it according to the actual movement of population. And this is very important because the movement of the population are the basis of our evolution, are the basis of evolution of the culture. And so all the history of the genus Homo, it's really based on movement. As you all know, when Homo go outside Africa, he has done it to go before to Asia, probably because the environmental conditions were more similar to the one they found in Africa, and only after they go to Europe. Usually, we consider that the first out of Africa has been made by Homo ergaster, even if we have never found properly Homo ergaster outside Africa. But by the biological point of view, it's quite complicated to define a species when you have very few remains. And for all the first phases of Europe, occupation, it's complicated to give a name to a species. So according to what we have found, and colleagues mostly have found, outside Africa, we have the tendency to say that the first European species is Homo georgicus, but the problem of Homo georgicus is that he has been found only in Georgia, in the site of Manisi, and we will see it after. So when we are talking about out of Africa, we have to imagine that in that moment, we have 3 different evolution lines that are taking place. In Africa, the Homo is going to Homo sapiens. In Europe, we have probably some example of species that arrive and they die and doesn't evolve until when the second out of Africa, the one of Homo heidelbergensis, is coming. And in Asia, we have evolution of, properly said, Homo erectus. We are in a period when between the 3 different contexts, we will never talk about Americas because they were occupied something like yesterday. So we focus only on those continents. And so in this period, we have a very important gap from one continent to the other, because we can see 3 different evolution, at least of techniques. And we have also different species dealing with the first occupation of the continents. Okay, so on what we are basing our knowing if we are talking about first European poplin? As you can see in this picture, very few data. And most part of both sites have not a very big lithic assemblage. It means that by the point of view of the interpretation of technical behavior, We are making hypotheses on a very small collection if we compare to more recent time. And we have very few sites. In this picture, you can see all sites that are more or less older than 1 million years ago. The youngest one is Vallonné, but we are about 1 million years ago. So this period of occupation is poorly documented. Of course, for a question of conservation, because we are dealing with very old sites and we need special condition of conservation to found them. And probably we are dealing also with a low number of individuals present in Europe. So whatever we will say, never forget those numbers. Here you can see the number of lithic implements that have been published from the most ancient site in Europe. And you will understand immediately that whatever I will tell you after about technology, about behavior, it's something that can change a lot. But one important thing is that if we take in consideration both sides, we can see some common behavioral activity. Never forget that we are defining for old prehistory behavior on the base of lithics, but it's not the real expression of a behavior. It's like if the archaeologues of 10,000 after Christ will define our society based on knife that we have in our house. This is not real, our culture, but we cannot do differently with this period of prehistory. So, going in a chronological way, as we have seen, the first well-dated site in Europe, it's the one of Umanistici in Georgia, that it's very well dated thanks to lava floor that are closing the archaeological level. And we will say Umanistici it's dated about 1.75 million years ago. In this site that has been excavated since a lot of time by the colleague of the National Museum of Georgia, lithic industries have been found in association with human remains. And we will see after that it's very rare to find the human's remain for this period. This is the reason why when we deal with the first European poplin, we say Homo sp because it's quite complicated to define a species. So in Umanistici, we consider to be in a crossroad between Asia on one side and Europe in the other. By the technological point of view, the lithic instruments found in Umanistici are basically related, we will see for all sides, to the animal carcasses treatment. At that time, we don't know if Homo were actively hunting or they were only scavenging, or both together. The things that we know that lithics never represents hunting object at that moment. And in the site of Umanistici, the Homo remains attributed to Homo georgicus, but it's a quite complicated species because in Homo georgicus we have very ancestral character and very modern character. So it's quite complicated to have the phylogenetic position of Homo georgicus. And I was saying in this site we found also in association saber-toothed tigers. It means that it's probably that the Homo was following the tiger, waiting them to do the work of killing animals, and after taking what the tiger was not eating. The environment in Umanistici, and this is very important, it's an open savanna. And we will see that all sites are characterized more or less by a dry climate, all hotter than the actual one. If we are looking to the technical behavior, the lithic implements found in Umanistici are very similar to the one that we can find in Africa about 2.6 million years ago. And you have to imagine that when in Manisi they were producing instrument that was produced in Africa 1 million years before, in Africa we start to see the appearance of the Acheulean culture. And these Acheulean cultures arrived in Europe about 700,000 years ago. It means that more or less between 1.7 and 7,000 million years ago, we have not connection, at least we have not cultural connection between Africa, Europe, and Asia. At that time, all lithic production were mainly finalized to obtain flake that were used to basically treat the animal carcasses. In all those sites, we see an exploitation of local raw material. What does it mean? That the Homo was already living in places where she can have access to raw material to knapp, to water, and of course, they was preferring places at the crossroad between different environment in order to have more possibility of huntings. So Manisi, it's a quite exceptional example of site because we have a lot of human remains, a lot of lithic industry. We have a very clear chronology thanks to the lava floors, and the other side that we will have in Europe have not the same characteristics. If we are talking about 1 million years ago. Here in the picture, you can see in black the older site in Europe, but in a longer span, and in white, the site that attests the arrival of Acheulean, so around 700,000 years ago. Concerning the diffusion road, it's quite complicated to say if occupation has been made by the east or by the west. When we say by the west, we are taking in consideration the utilization of the Gibraltar Strait. But for the moment, it's quite complicated to say if effectively Homo was passed by Gibraltar Straits, because even if it's a very short passage, there are very hard currents. And so it's quite complicated to imagine one passage from Gibraltar if we are not taking into consideration active sailing. So going from Manisi to Europe, we can see according to dates that the older sites are in East Europe and little younger ones are in West Europe. So for the moment, it's most probable that that the migration was coming from east to the west. And in the picture on the right side, you can see that all those sites have not yielded human remains. So this was published in 2008 and things have been changed because at that time there was another site in Italy, Ceprano, considered as an example of first European poplin, but after new datation and studies has shown that not. And between all those sites that are very, very old, the only ones who have human remains today are Barranco León and Cima del Elefante. But in both sides, we will see after it's not possible to define a species. So Pirro Nord, according to the biochronology, it's the oldest European site and is located in southern Italy. At that time, the Adriatic Sea was shorter, so the passage was easier than today. Pirro Nord is inside an active quarry. It means that the site is not in a primary position. It's a fissure like a dolina that was filled by the upside. So this quarry, that, as I said, it's also always active, is characterized by a lot of fissure that was filled basically during final Miocene. But some of this fissure was after emptied and filled again with Pleistocene sediments. And Pirro Nord is exactly that. As I was saying, as you can see in the upper picture, Piranha is a secondary position site. It means that the Homo was living somewhere in the upper part, and after mainly the water has bring sediments, the complete sites, and also other carcasses of animals inside a fissure. And today we are excavating that. It's a quite complicated site by the point of view of the organization, because as it's an active quarry, they continue to work. And so finally our site is something like on the wall of the quarry. This is the reason why the operation of excavation are not so easy. And the deposit, it's a chaotic deposit. It's quite complicated to define as stratigraphy, because the infilling event has probably been made very, very quickly, of course, of a geological time scale. And this quickly deposit also allow us to say that all lithics and fauna are really associated. This is demonstrated also by other characteristics. The age of Piranha has been defined only on the chronological basis, because even if we have tried all kind of datation, anything is working, and when we try to date the site with radiometric dating, we always obtain an age that is too old and not in accordance with the biochronology. So we can say that Piranha is dated between 1.6 and 1.3 million years ago, according to the the faunal unit, and especially based on micromammals. In the site, we have more than 20 species of amphibian and reptiles, 47 species of birds, and more than 40 species of mammals, of course, including Homo, but we have only indirect evidence of the presence of Homo. As I was saying before, the site is characterized by a chaotic accumulation, and we know for sure that some of the bones are associated to human activities, because we have found cut marks on some bones, mainly herbivore bones, of course. And the study of taphonomy and cut marks also allow us to say that in Piranha there was a secondary access to prey. It means that the Homo was waiting for big carnivore to kill the animal after they was coming to take what it was left by the carnivores. So the chronology, as I told you, is based on fauna remains, and mainly on these small mammals, that it's the Alophoiomus rufoi, that allow us to have one idea about the chronology. And we can associate this site on the basis of faunas to another site in Spain with its Ventamicena, but the site of Ventamicena in Spain, it's only a paleontological site, so it have no example of presence of lithic remains of Homo remains. And so this is why we are saying that up to what we know now, Piranha is the oldest site in Europe. Concerning the environment, all sites that I will talk about are characterized by more or less the same environment. So an open environment with small lakes, seasonal lakes. So we have an important change of climate during summer and winter season. And we can imagine a situation very similar to the one that we are used to image for savanna, African savanna today. Concerning the lithic production, we don't need to focus on what they was doing, because for the ones who are not dealing with lithic, it's very boring, and also for the ones who do lithics, it's very boring. But you have just to know that at that time, this Homo was already very ready to the knapping. They was using, as I told you, local raw material that they were choosing different dimension of cobble in order to produce different reduction sequences. And one interesting thing is that the first time we can see something like a standardization. And it seems, yes, normal, but in reality, it's quite hard for that period to define a standardization of blanks. And in Peter Nord, we know that they were looking for this kind of flakes that are characterized by a point that is not in axis with the flake, opposed to a part for apprehension. And this is giving us important information about the behavior, because they give us the information about the fact that Homo was already looking for something specific, probably for some specific activity, but it has not been possible to define it by use-where analysis, because for so old material is not so easy to do use-where analysis. And so in period Nord, we have a different production, and those productions seems to be finalized to something specific, to a specific activity that I think we will never discover. But the important thing is to know that they was already previewing what they was going to do with their flake. At the same, more or less, chronology, because for those periods, the chronology it's always quite complicated. We have big mistake, big interval for the dates. And of course, each author tried to have all their site. If the same conference will be made by Robert Sala, we say to you that Cima dell'Elefante is the oldest site in Europe. So it's just a question of very few years of difference of the geological scale. So if we want to continue by the point of view of the chronology, we have to go to Spain. And in Spain, in the site that everybody knows, in the Sierra de Atapuerca, we have several sites that attest the presence of Homo since 1.1 million years ago until Neolithic. I think this is the most extraordinary example of prehistorical site. They are very lucky. So in the Sierra de Atapuerca, about 1.2 million years ago, in the site that is called Cima dell'Elefante, they found level where, in association, they found very few lithic implements, cut marks on bones, and human remains. And you can see here in the picture the human remain they found. It's just a mandible, and so it has not been possible to define a species. You have to know that in Atapuerca, in a most recent site about 700,000 years ago, they found a species that they call Homo antecessor. Homo antecessor is a species that is in Europe, it's only in Europe, and have no descendant. And one of the hypotheses about this mandible dated 1.2 million years ago is that this is the ancestor of Homo antecessor. The site, of course, like Pirro Nord, is still under excavation, so we hope that in the near future we will find more human remains in order to also define the species that firstly occupy the Western Europe. The stratigraphy in Cima dell'Elefante is different from Pirro Nord because here we are in a cave and not in an open air site, and of course the deposits is not in a secondary position. So by a lot of point of view, we can get more information and more precise information than in Pirro Nord. Generally speaking, again, the climate was more or less similar to the actual one, a little bit hotter, and also in Cima dell'Elefante we have a very important faunistic list, even if less well conserved than in Pirro Nord. And again, so we can see that Homo was living in a place with a lot of kind of animals, herbivores and carnivores. And again, also in Cima dell'Elefante, the cut marks, of course, are founded basically on herbivores. The lithic industry are not so well conserved in Cima dell'Elefante, but they show us again that the production was made on local raw material. It means I take the stone that is near me and I will produce my flake. And once again, all reduction sequences are finalized to obtention of flakes. And I put this picture just to show you that this is the first European, if we consider Georgia at the crossroad between Europe and Asia. So this is the first fossil that we have in Europe. Always in Spain, in southern Spain, we have two other sites that attest the human occupation around 1 million, 1.2, 1.3 million years ago, and are the sites of Barranco León and Fonte Nueva. Here again, the occupation was an open air site. Generally, people that are not dealing with prehistory imagine the prehistorical man living in cave, and is not at all the case. Of course, we have a lot of sites that are founded in cave because it's easier to find a conserved deposit inside a cave. But probably most part of the time Homo was living on open air sites. And it's probably that they was also constructing something like houses. I don't know the word for not houses, the things before, but I suppose you understood. So in Fonte Nueva Barranco León, they found one human teeth, but once again, one teeth is not enough to say the species. And they found climatic conditions similar to the one we have already described. They found lithic industry finalized to the carcasses treatment. And of course, we found cut marks on bones. Here in the image, you can see that they found also a carcass in connection of elephants, in connection with, in the same place, hyena, coprolites, and flake. This attesting the coexistence of different animals on the same animal. And in this case, it seems that the hyena arrived after Homo. So probably the animal was killed by the Homo or by another animals that exploit the carcass before, after the Homo arrived, and at the end, the hyena arrived. And as I told you, here again, the technical production is finalized to obtention of flakes. And in here, we have exploitation of different raw material that are present in the site. In Piero Nord, there was only one type of raw material that was flint. Here we can see the utilization of flint for doing small flakes, but also of limestone to make catenage, as you can see here. So in theory, the site of Barranco León and Fonte Nueva are more similar to the Olduvayan, African Olduvayan than Piero Nord. For Cima dell'Elefante, we cannot say so much because they found very few lithic industries. If we are going again to the east, we can deal with the site of Pont de Lavaux, that actually speaking is the one who have given to us the highest number of lithic industry. And Pont de Lavaux, it's characterized by a production of quartz. So the kind of instrument produced are very different from the one we saw before, because the quartz is not so easy to be knapped like flint or limestone are. And in here we can see basically again the preparation of catenage finalized to the treatment of animal carcasses. But the interesting things of Pont de Lavaux, that is dated about 1 million years ago, is that we have evidence of two houses. So here in gray, you can see those structures that attest us how the Homo at that time was already modifying the environment to prepare their camp. And this example, it's quite unique because it's the only site that have been excavated in a very big area, and the only one where it was easy to recognize big stones apported from outside to inside, because those two structure was recognized because the stones that are composing them, probably the base of something like a house, those stones was taken from outside to the site. And in Pont de Lavaux, we see another technical behavior that is considered as very opportunistic. As I told you, the quartz is not so easy to be knapped. So here, at the difference of the other side, there was mainly used direct percussion by hard hammer. In this side, we can see that the technique of percussion, it's the bipolar percussion anvil. And this gives us information about the high adaptability of those species. So they was adapting to the local environment. This is a phase that it's persisting in human evolution for a lot of time. Today, we are no more adapting to the environment. We adapt the environment to us. Things have changed a lot. And coming back to Italy, about 1 million years ago, we have the site of Ca' Belvedere di Montepoggiolo, but it has been excavated in the 80s by the Professor Peretto of the University of Ferrara. And here again, we have evidences of a hot, dry climate, and we have an open air site. According to acidity of sediments, any fauna remains have been found, so we are only dealing with lithics. The Homo in this area was living near the sea and exploiting the raw material in littoral coasts. And besides, again, as I told, it's an open air site, and probably it's related to a camp where they was producing lithic industry, exploiting his animal, but not for sure really worth living. The important things and the unicity of this site, it's that we found a lot of refitting. It means that we found the complete reduction sequences, so we can really recognize and reconstruct how the knapping has been made. And once again, we see an opportunistic production. When we are saying opportunistic, we are saying something fast, but not easy. The best way to have something with a less number of gestures. And so those refitting also allow us to say that they was producing lithic there, using lithic there, and let the lithics there. So this is why we say that probably they was not really living there, but just exploiting things. And here again, we have different reduction sequences according to the morphology of the block. And here again, they also only use flint. Some of the flakes are retouched. It means that the cutting agent has been modified to change the functionality. And the use-wear analysis made on this side by Laura Longo allow to recognize different activities, very different. So lithics were used to work animal carcasses, but also to work on wood. Probably wood was the main raw material, but wood is not conserved, so we have only indirect example of utilization of wood. So, according to what we have seen, we can try to make a hypothesis about the diffusion road outside Africa. But of course, if we will find tomorrow another site older than 1.5 in Northern Europe or in Northern Russia, we will change our minds. So this is the hypothesis according to the actual knowing about human migration. So we know that something about 2 million years ago, Homo ergaster go out of Africa, going to Asia, where we have oldest evidences, because the evidences in Indonesia are dated about 2 million years ago. So probably they go out of Africa before that date. And after, we have a progressive occupation of Europe from the east. And at that time, we have something like only south occupation of Europe, because the occupation of northern latitude, like England, for example, are more recent and are appearing only with the second out of Africa, the ones who is bringing Acheulean to Europe, so around 700,000 years ago. So this kind of migration tell us that at that time, the Homo was strictly influenced by the climate. So it was adapted to quite a hot climate, and it was not still ready to live in northern latitude with less hot climate and with drier condition. Of course, we still have the question marks about the passage from Gibraltar Strait, because it's true that the occupation of Iberian Peninsula is very old, but it can be plausible also with arriving of population from the east. But we have never to forget that in Morocco, we have evidence of Homo presence around 1.6 million years ago, and we have those evidence in Algeria too. So, of course, the occupation of Northern Africa is very old, like the occupation of Europe was. So we can make absolutely some consideration about the homogeneity of the Mediterranean area. And we have not to forget that it's in Northern Africa that we found the oldest human remains of Homo sapiens in the site of Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, dated 300,000 years ago. So I think that in the future, the importance of Northern Africa in terms of evolution of cultures and Homo will need more intervention, because before, all the old prehistory was focused on East and South Africa, from where most part of the human fossils are coming. So if we want to try to define a common patterns in Europe occupation, it's quite complicated, because inside we can see convergence, but at the same time we can see divergences. And so we have to try to quantify the influence of environment and the influence of culture. But for this moment, it's quite complicated to define Velitic production in function of environment or culture. Probably both aspects as an important influence on the characteristic of Velitic assemblage. And of course, we have also a problem of chronology, because we are dealing with chronology that have very long forks. And by a general point of view, we can say that during the first European toppling, we are facing with a mosaic scenario that show us some common point, but also some local behavior, as we have seen for the pointed face in Piero Nord. This means that we need to find more sites and to excavate more to answer to those questions. And I thank you for your attention, and at your disposal if you have any kind of questions.
Oh, thank you very much, Marta. Thank you for this wonderful presentation and for so much information that is really new, coming from the latest research. And your work has significantly pushed back the timeline of early European occupation considerably. So this is quite an impressive achievement. and it was wonderful to hear about the details of your work today. There's one thing I think it's not easy to excavate in Piranha North. And physically, you need quite some skills, some climbing skills to go to the site.
You think I have physics skills? Yeah, in theory, by the point of view of security system of a university, we also have, we all very responsible of the site. We have made a course of high level security on queries and so on. By a point of view, there is a buffer via ferrata that is made in the site. So everything is in security, and we just ask students to pay attention. We never had an accident. So it's quite complicated to organize, because the thing is that it's an active query. It means that they are still working. So we cannot work when the query works are working. So we have to go there in August. It's southern Italy. Okay, it's not Philippines, but it's very hot and it's very complicated. But it's 15 years that we are excavating there. And now there is a routine. And so it's not so complicated.
15 years, that's quite a time. Do you know how many more years you can work in Piranha North? It will go on.
I think I will be not the one who will finish the excavation.
Wonderful.
Before. Except if one day they will decide to explode the query, and so we'll have no more Piranha North. But
I hope that won't happen. Aito, do we have questions from the audience?
Yes, there is one.
Yes, right. I understand, Dr. Marta, that you spoke about mostly about flakes, human remains, and carcasses. But we have Mr. Bernie here who is interested about pollens and plants. He asked, were there evidence of honoring their dead community members, like presence of pollen from funerary flowers found with the Neanderthal fossils? Were you also interested in fossil pollen? Grazie.
Okay, so for this period, we have any evidence nowhere of funeral activities. We have nothing that can say us that they has a symbolic behavior. But I want to underline that we have tendency to consider symbolic behavior as a very evolutive thing, but it's not. We can live without. And to wait for first funerary behavior, we have to wait a lot of time, because the first one to make funerary are Homo sapiens. Also Neanderthal do it, but the burial of Neanderthal are younger than the one of Sapiens. So here we don't know nothing about hypothetical symbolic behavior. And concerning pollen, of course, we have not pollen in the funerary structure, because we have not funerary structure. But the pollen are studied in the site in order to reconstruct paleo environment. For example, in Piranha North, we have tried, but we have nothing. No one pollen is conserved. In other sites, like Fonte Nuova, Barranco Leone, Ciudad del Elefante, they have pollen, and they have based the paleo-ecological analysis also on pollen. And also pollen show that all environment was characterized by very open area, with temporary lakes, and with a quite humid environment during winter and arid environment during summer. So there was another part in the question. Of course, we have not found Neanderthal fossil, because Neanderthal are evolving in Europe about more or less 300,000 years ago. It's quite complicated to say when the Neanderthal start, because Neanderthal, it's the evolution of Homo heidelbergensis. So we see the Homo heidelbergensis taking characteristic of Homo neanderthalensis. So it's hard to give really a step about when Homo neanderthalensis arrived. And of course, in these sites, we are more or less 1 million before the evolution of Homo neanderthalensis. I hope I answered the question.
Right. And Dr. Pawlik, if I may accommodate Professor Mary's question.
Of course.
She asks, if the northern part of Europe does not have evidence of this migration before 1 million years, when did the Homo enter there? And were the routes different, or were they further developments from the earlier migrations?
Okay, so yes, exactly. We have not evidence in Northern Europe, probably because the climate was not good for the behavior of Homo at that time. Probably the occupation of the northern part, so the evidence that we have, for example, in Happisburgh in UK, but it's not Europe, so I don't know if I can talk about it. I will try. And we have those evidence in period where we have a new technology. So when during the second out of Africa, the Homo comes with a new technology that is the Acheulean, and probably with this technology, it's allowed to occupy also more different environment. And the occupation of England, of course, at that time, there was not the sea in the middle. England was during cold period linked to Europe. And so those migration are probably coming from France to the upper part. If we go earlier in the time, yes, we can see that the migration routes are very different. But we don't know if they are different, it's or only if we can define it better. Because for Upper Paleolithic, for example, where we have, we can recognize different culture, different from East Europe, West Europe, we don't talk about Asia and so on. We can make the difference between cultures, so we can trace human migration routes. For the period that we were talking about, we cannot define the different culture, and probably there were, but we have not enough data to make the difference between Pirro Nord and Barranco Leon. And so this not allow us to define precisely where they was going, where they was coming from. So for recent period, it's easier to define migration because we know more, we have more sites, we have a better chronology, and so on. I hope I answered.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Marta. Thank you, Professor Mary. She's always watching our webinars, of course. I will now turn you over to Dr. Pawlik.
Thank you, Aido, and yeah, thank you, Mary, for the question. Oh, we have another question from Mylene.
No, Mylene, I was joking. No, they will never do it. Okay, because because yeah, it can be because of course the Ministry of Culture has a protection of the sites, and so of course not. And if they will do it, they will pay I don't know how much to the state. But there can be an accident or I don't know what, but no, I was joking, they will never expose the query. But I like to, because so I can make a holiday on August.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could not use explosives to your advantage.
Yes, we can to excavate very fast, but I'm not sure that the material at the end will be so nice.
But I suppose there are quite a lot of fissures that can be excavated, investigated. So yeah, well,
yes,
as you said, there's a lot of work still that can be done.
No, because all the other fissure, it's very rare that you found a fissure with Villafranchian sediments, because it's a structural high place. So everything was filled by Miocene sediments, and at that time we have an insular fauna that is called fauna microtia. And very few of the fissure was emptied. They become empty during Villafranchian and filled again, only the higher one. And Piranha, it's the only one existing now. Maybe there were other in the extractive basin, but at this time, any one of them is visible. Piro, it's the only one. So if you are interested to excavate Miocene, yes, you have a lot, but I'm not.
Thank you. No, probably not Miocene. But yeah, I definitely would love to visit Piro North. And I
You
never
are
managed to
welcome
visit your
whenever
site.
you
Yeah.
want.
I know Chotachara, but always missed Piro North. Okay. And I think it's not just me who wants to come and visit your site.
You are all welcome, and I wait for you.
Thank you very much, Marta. Marta, I know you are in a hurry and you have to go to the
Don't
next
make lesson.
meeting. So let me thank you very much again for having the time to join our webinar and for presenting your wonderful research to us. Thanks, and of course, best of luck for all your future ventures. You just finished Piro North, but there will be probably so much more happening and coming out. And I hope very much that we will see each other very soon again in person, not just virtually on the screen.
Thank you very much, Riczar and Alfred. You were very kind to invite me. And I'm sorry if I have to go. And I wish to thank you, everybody. And I really hope to come back to Philippines as soon as possible.
That would be wonderful. Very much looking forward to this.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Marta.
Marta. And before we close the webinar, let me just announce our next speaker, which will be Dr. Hugo Reyes Centeno of the Department of Anthropology and the William S. Webb Museum of Anthropology from the University of Kentucky in Lexington. He will talk about human biocultural diversity in the Philippines 700,000 years ago until today. Ciao, Marta.
Sorry, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
think we have
Marta.
Thanks, Marta. Bye-bye. I think, but next Tuesday we will have a very different time because of the more extreme time difference between Lexington and Manila. We will start, if I'm not mistaken, at 10 a.m. already. Is this correct, Rick? Ido?
Yes, it's 10 a.m.
10 a.m. But anyway, we will announce the registration details again on Ateneo Blueboard, the department's Facebook page, and the other channels we usually use. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us again, and I hope to see you all next Tuesday. Thanks and take care. Stay safe, everyone.